Welcome to the Adventures of George Washington. I am your host, Professor Worthington. In this series, we will examine the life of the first President of the United States from his birth to his death. Each episode will feature a pivotal event in Washington's life and analyze the impact these events had on his philosophy and subsequent conduct. This video series aims to highlight both the positive and negative impacts of Washington's ideas and actions on modern society, either because we have followed his advice or because we have ignored it. As mentioned in the previous video, George Washington's education was largely self-taught through books. One of the first books he encountered was Matthew Hale's Contemplations, Moral and Divine. The book, which was written about a century before George's birth, originally belonged to his father Augustine and then to his mother Mary after his father's death. Mary Washington had a daily habit of reading passages from the book out loud to young George and his siblings, teaching them sound maxims for daily living and rational principles of moral virtue. Contemplations, Moral and Divine emphasized the virtues of wisdom, justice, honesty, duty, integrity, generosity, humility, temperance, patience, thoroughness, and gratitude. Essentially, the book taught that people have a duty to seek wisdom for themselves, demand justice for others, and at all times act with integrity. These lessons were so treasured by Washington that he carefully preserved the book after his mother's death many years later, and continued her tradition by reading it regularly to the young children in his family. One particular lesson from the book that greatly influenced George's philosophy and behavior was about oratory. Hale advised his readers to keep three principles in mind when delivering public speeches. First, speak with humility and avoid seeking applause, as acts of pride and ostentation are a form of self-idolatry. Second, speak with truth and never use a public platform to maintain falsehoods or perpetuate foolish opinions. Third, speak with integrity and never use eloquence or rhetoric to deceive people. Another lesson that Hale taught was the importance of wisdom. In his words,
"The great preeminence that man hath over beasts is his reason, and the great preeminence that one man hath over another is wisdom. Though all men have ordinarily the privilege of reason, yet all men have not the habit of wisdom. The greatest commendation that we can ordinarily give a man is that he is a wise man, and the greatest reproach that can be to a man, and that which is worst resented, is to be called or esteemed a fool. And yet as much as the reputation of wisdom is valued, and the reputation of folly is resented, the generality of mankind are in truth very fools, and make it the great part of their business to be so. And many that pretend to seek after wisdom do either mistake the thing or mistake the way to attain it. Commonly, those that are the greatest pretenders to wisdom and the search after it place it in some little narrow concern, but place it not in its true latitude commensurate to the nature of mankind. And hence it is that one esteems it the only wisdom to be a wise politician or statesman, another to be a wise and knowing naturalist, another to be a wise acquirer of wealth, and the like, and all these are wisdoms in their kind. And the world perchance would be much better than it is if these kinds of wisdom were more in fashion than they are. But yet these are but partial wisdoms. The wisdom that is most worth the seeking and finding is that which renders a man a wise man.
for Hale, a deeply religious man whose beliefs were shaped during the Protestant Reformation in England, the wisdom that was most worth the seeking and finding was the wisdom found in the Christian Bible. Specifically, Hale believed that the most wise thing a person could do was to fear God. While George Washington may have accepted this definition of wisdom in his youth, he adopted a more Stoic interpretation as he matured. The older Washington defined wisdom as the proper understanding of the principles that govern individual behavior and social interaction. Nonetheless, Hale's teachings instilled in Washington an appreciation for the importance of the virtue of wisdom. Hale taught that the pursuit of knowledge was the noblest act of humans. Wisdom was his fundamental virtue because without wisdom it was difficult or impossible to acquire the other virtues. Correspondingly, justice was his penultimate virtue because once individuals acquired the other virtues, they naturally created fair societies. To paraphrase Hale, justice is the effect of excellent wisdom, and without the virtue of justice, societies and persons fall into disorder, confusion, and dissolution. In fair-minded societies, individuals of honesty interacted truthfully with each other, individuals of integrity kept the promises they made, and individuals of diligence fulfilled their duties of seeking knowledge and serving others. Hale believed that wisdom gave individuals the ability to discern between good and evil, or more accurately, to discern between ambiguous situations and circumstances that were neither clearly good nor clearly evil. Paraphrasing the words of Hale,
The exercise of wisdom principally consists of the weighing of the different values of things of several natures, and ranking them according to their value. It also requires the diligent consideration of the circumstances that accompany the different things, because many times superficially good things have bad consequences and are thus less preferable. For instance, I prioritize the safety of society over my own safety, because when society is at risk, not only am I in danger, but many others are as well. Additionally, the long-term consequences of harm to society are more significant than harm to an individual. Thus, the greater good of society is preferred to the greater good of the individual. Equally, if I see two men in danger, and I can but relieve one of them, both being equal to me, I am to prefer the relief of him whose danger is greater and more eminent before the relief of him whose danger is less or more remote. And herein prudence and integrity of heart must be the director of my actions, always remembering that nothing unjust or dishonest should be mingled with what I do. And finally, as a personal belief, I value the good of my health before the good of my wealth.
Hale also emphasized that discernment required the ability to regulate one's emotions and desires. He viewed our passions and desires as part of the world within us. While individuals had limited control over their external world, he believed that the virtues of temperance and moderation provided wise individuals with complete control over their internal world. Hale defined moderation as the virtue whereby a man governs his sensual appetite, his passions and affections, his words and actions from all excess, and he gave temperance the more narrow definition of prudent restraint of our appetite from all excess in eating, drinking, and those other inclinations that gratify our senses. He believed that moderation and temperance were the part of wisdom that gave humans the ability to make correct decisions. He said that the passions are not necessarily evil. Love and hope as well as hatred and fear are part of nature and therefore play a role in society. However, when any passion becomes unruly, misplaced, or overacted, they occasion the greatest trouble in the world, both to the persons themselves in whom they are and to others. The unchecked pursuit of pleasures corrupted the mind. In other words, it was the attachment to these passions that was evil, and moderation was the only defense. Hale's ideas on moderation are similar to the concept of disinterestedness that was discussed by Porteous in episode 1 of this series. For both Hale and Porteous, disinterestedness led to selflessness and unbiased decision-making, which in turn produced fairness in society. Hale believed that humans struggled to balance their personal duties with their societal responsibilities. He argued that only by adhering to virtues could one achieve this balance. Every virtuous individual was expected to diligently develop their talents to contribute to society with maximum effectiveness. Serving others was seen as a societal duty, and every virtuous person was expected to generously contribute to the welfare of society. Though Hale's teachings were deeply rooted in his strong religious beliefs, his ideas on wisdom, moderation, and disinterestedness aligned closely with core principles of Stoicism. Thus, at an early age, George Washington was exposed to the teachings of Stoicism. In fact, Hale introduced George to the teachings of the man that would become his favorite Stoic philosopher, Seneca. In one part of his book, Hale translated the second act of Seneca's play Thyestes, which emphasized the importance of living a modest life and retiring in peace. And in another part, he admits that the philosophy of Stoicism is founded upon the highest grounds of reason. While the words of Matthew Hale introduced George Washington to the philosophy of Stoicism, it was his time at Mount Vernon with his brother Lawrence, Lawrence's wife Anne, and the entire Fairfax family that solidified his belief in the philosophy's importance. You will learn more about this in the next episode of The Adventures of George Washington. Thank you for watching this episode of The Adventures of George Washington. Each week we will bring you a new video that chronicles key events in the life of America's greatest military and political leader. If you found the content useful or entertaining, please subscribe. We look forward to being with you again in the next episode. I have been your host, Professor Worthington. For more details on the information presented in this video, you should read Contemplations Moral and Divine by Matthew Hale, The Life of George Washington by Edward Everett, and Recollections and Private Memoirs of Washington by George Washington Parke Custis. These are available at archive.org. See this video's description for a complete list of references.